Welcome, dear traveler, to Medieval Sleep Tales, your refuge from the rushing world, your doorway to a time when days moved with the sun and work was measured by the rhythm of skilled hands. Tonight, we journey not to grand castles or distant battlefields, but to a place far more intimate and comforting, a village smithy where the forge fire glows like a beating heart, and the ring of hammer on anvil marks the peaceful passing of hours. Here, in the workshop of Master Willem, a craftsman whose calloused hands hold 30 years of wisdom, will spend a long, gentle day watching the ancient dance of fire and iron. Let yourself settle in now. Feel your breathing slow to match the bellows' steady rhythm. Allow the warmth of the forge to seep into your bones as the soft glow of embers paints the world in shades of amber and gold. Whether you're seeking restful sleep, peaceful company for your journey, or simply a few hours of tranquil escape, the blacksmith's workshop welcomes you. Close your eyes. Listen. The day is beginning, and there is honest work to be done, but there is no hurry here. Only the timeless satisfaction of a craft perfected over generations. Welcome to the forge. Welcome to peace. Part 1. First light at the forge. The world still sleeps when Master Willem rises from his straw mattress, careful not to wake his wife Marjorie, whose soft breathing mingles with the pre-dawn silence. Through the shuttered window, he can see the faintest pearl-gray hint of coming day, that magical moment when night has loosened its grip, but morning has not yet claimed the sky. He moves by memory through the darkness of their cottage, his feet knowing every creaking floorboard, every uneven stone. The air is cool, carrying that particular freshness that only exists in the hour before sunrise, when dew still clings to every blade of grass and spider web in the village. He pulls on his leather apron, worn smooth and dark from years of use, its surface marked by countless tiny burn holes that tell the story of sparks and hot metal. The apron is heavy with familiar weight, settling onto his shoulders like an old friend's hand. His hands, broad and scarred with the silver lines of old burns, reach for the woolen tunic that hangs by the door. Even in summer, the early morning carries a chill, and the forge, cold all night, will take time to wake. Outside, the village of Thornbury lies wrapped in that profound stillness that only comes when most souls are still dreaming. A dog barks once in the distance, then falls silent. Somewhere, a rooster clears its throat experimentally, not yet ready to announce the day. Willem's feet crunch softly on the packed earth path that leads from his cottage to the smithy, just 20 paces away. The path is so familiar he could walk it blind, has walked it blind on countless winter mornings when darkness stretched long past dawn. The smithy stands solid and squat, its stone walls thick enough to hold the heat of 1,000 forge fires, its thatched roof dark against the lightning sky. The wide door stands open. It's never closed except in the fiercest storms, and through that opening comes a faint residual warmth from yesterday's fire, though the forge itself has long since cooled to dead gray ash. Willem pauses at the threshold, as he does every morning, acknowledging this space that has been his cathedral, his meditation, his life's work for 3 decades. The smell of cold iron and old char greets him like incense. He steps inside, and the world narrows to this familiar realm of iron and fire. The forge itself dominates the far wall, a massive structure of fitted stone and clay, its chimney rising up through the thatch to carry smoke skyward. Around it, the tools of his trade hang in careful order hammers of every size and weight, tongs with jaws shaped for different purposes, punches and chisels and swages, each in its proper place. His father taught him this. A blacksmith who cannot find his tools in darkness is no blacksmith at all. The first task of every day is the same, and Willem approaches it with the reverence it deserves. From the wood store, he selects kindling, small, dry twigs that will catch quickly, and larger pieces of oak that will burn hot and long. He arranges them in the forge with care, building a small pyramid with space for air to move through. The art of fire making is older than civilization. And every blacksmith is part of that ancient lineage, a keeper of humanity's first and most precious technology. He strikes flint against steel, and sparks shower down onto a nest of dry moss he's prepared. One spark catches, and he bends close, breathing gently, coaxing that tiny orange glow into life. The moss begins to smoke. Then a small flame licks upward, fragile as a new thought. He feeds it carefully with the smallest twigs, watching it grow stronger, more confident. There is something deeply meditative about this process, this daily act of bringing light and warmth from cold darkness. It centers him, prepares his mind for the day's work. As the kindling catches properly, flames dancing now with growing enthusiasm, he adds larger pieces of wood. The fire crackles and pops, sending up its first wisps of smoke. Through the open door, he can see the sky growing lighter, stars fading one by one. A bird begins to sing, then another. The world is waking with him, and there is comfort in the shared beginning. But wood alone will not give him the heat he needs. From the coal store, he brings handfuls of black mineral, each piece carefully selected. Coal burns hotter than wood, hot enough to make iron glow red and then white, hot enough to make it soft and willing under the hammer. He places the coal around and over the growing wood fire, not smothering it but giving it fuel that will sustain the intense heat he needs. The coal begins to catch, its edges glowing red, and the quality of the heat changes, becomes more focused, more intense. Now comes the bellows. This massive leather and wood device is the forge's lungs, and Willem grasps its long handle with both hands. He pushes down, and air rushes through the pipe into the heart of the fire. The coals glow brighter, and flames leap upward with new vigor. He lifts the handle of the bellows, inhales, and pushes again. With each pump, the fire grows stronger, hotter, more alive. The rhythm is ancient: push, lift, push, lift. His breathing synchronizes with the bellows' breath, and he feels himself sliding into that meditative state where thought quiets and only the work remains. The forge begins to roar softly, a sound like distant wind, or perhaps like the breathing of some great, benevolent creature. Heat rolls outward in waves, and Willem feels it on his face and forearms, already beginning to sweat despite the cool morning air. This is the moment he works toward every dawn, when the forge truly wakes, when cold iron and patient stone transform into the beating heart that will sustain his work all day. He steps back to let the fire establish itself, feeding it more coal as needed, working the bellows with steady rhythm. The light inside the smithy changes as the flames grow. Shadows dance on the stone walls, and every tool hanging in its place seems to emerge from darkness, revealed by the growing glow. The anvil, that great block of iron that has known his hammer for 30 years, catches the firelight and gleams dully. It stands in its traditional place, secured to a massive oak stump sunk deep in the earth, positioned so a right-handed smith has the light from door and forge illuminating his work. As the forge reaches proper temperature, Willem turns his attention to his tools. From a barrel, he draws water fresh from the well last night and pours it into the slack tub, the large wooden vessel where hot iron will hiss and steam when he quenches it. The water is cold enough to make his fingers ache when he tests it. Perfect. He checks the swage block, that rectangular piece of iron riddled with different shaped holes and grooves, each one a form for shaping metal. He tests the slack on his tongs, making sure they open and close smoothly. He runs his hand over his favorite hammer, a 4-pound cross peen with a handle worn smooth by his grip. Through the doorway, dawn has truly arrived. The sky has shifted from gray to pale blue, and long rays of golden sunlight slant across the village. He can hear voices now, a mother calling to her children, the creak of a well pulley, the lowing of cows being led to pasture. The village is stirring, and soon his first customers will arrive. But for this moment, he has time to simply be present in his space, to appreciate the transformation he's wrought, from cold and dark to warm and light, from silence to the soft roar of ready fire. He selects his first piece of work from the rack where yesterday's unfinished projects wait. It's a simple draw knife for old Richard the carpenter, half finished, needing its edge shaped, and then hardened in fire and water. Willem examines it critically in the growing light, turning it over, planning his approach. He slides one end into the coals, positioning it carefully, then works the bellows again. The metal disappears into the glowing heart of the forge, and he watches for the color change that will tell him it's ready for the hammer. This is his craft, his meditation, his prayer. The patient heating of metal, the precise striking of hammer on anvil, the satisfaction of seeing raw iron transformed into useful form through skill and effort. Every piece begins as an idea, becomes a challenge, and ends as a tool that will serve someone's need. There is deep contentment in this, in making things that matter, things that will last, things that help his neighbors live their lives. The metal begins to glow, first a dull red, then brighter, moving toward orange. Not yet. It needs to reach the right temperature hot enough to move under the hammer, but not so hot it burns and weakens. He watches with the patience learned over 30 years, learned first from his own father in this very smithy, knowledge passed down through generations like a sacred trust. His father had stood here, had worked the same anvil, had breathed the same smoky air, and his father's father before him. The continuity of it, the unbroken line of craftsmen stretching back into the mists of time, fills Willem with quiet pride. The metal reaches the right color, a bright orange that seems to pulse with inner life. He draws it from the forge with his tongs, moves swiftly to the anvil, positions it exactly where he wants it. The hammer rises and falls, and the first clear ring of steel on iron echoes through the smithy and out into the waking village. It's a sound everyone in Thornbury knows, a sound that marks the true beginning of the day as surely as the church bells will mark its hours. The blacksmith is at work, and all is right with the world. Ring, ring, ring. Each strike is deliberate, controlled, purposeful. The hammer moves the metal, stretching it, thinning it, shaping it to his will. He works quickly, but without panic. The iron will tell him when it cools too much and needs returning to the fire. Between strikes, he rotates the piece slightly with the tongs, ensuring even work along its length. His movements are economical, practiced, automatic. His mind is both intensely focused and completely quiet, existing in that paradoxical state where mastery dwells. The metal darkens as it cools, losing its glow. He returns it to the forge, works the bellows, waits for the heat to return. This is the rhythm of blacksmithing: fire and hammer, patience and power in alternating waves. Each cycle moves the work forward, brings the vision in his mind closer to reality in his hands. There is no rushing this process. The iron demands respect, requires time, will not be bullied or hurried beyond its nature. As he works, the sun climbs higher and the light inside the smithy changes. The forge fire, so dominant in the pre-dawn darkness, now shares the space with daylight streaming through door and high windows. Dust motes dance in the angled beams, made visible by the light, tiny worlds spinning in silence. The heat builds too, despite the open door heat from the forge, heat from the climbing sun, heat from his own exertion. Sweat darkens his tunic and drips from his brow, but this is familiar, expected, even welcome. A blacksmith who doesn't sweat isn't working hard enough. Young Thomas arrives first, the baker's son, barely 14, but already showing the broad shoulders he'll carry as a man. "Good morning, Master Willem," he calls from the doorway, respectful of the invisible threshold that separates the smithy from the outside world. One doesn't simply walk into a smith's workspace uninvited. There are too many dangers, too many hot things and sharp things and heavy things that might do harm to the unwary. "Morning, Thomas," Willem replies, not pausing in his work. The hammer continues its steady rhythm. "What brings you by so early?" "Father needs the bread paddle repaired if you have time today. The handle split last night during the evening baking, The boy holds up the wooden paddle, showing where the wood has cracked near where it meets the flat blade. Willem nods, still hammering. Set it by the door. I'll have it ready by midday. 3 more strikes, and he returns the piece to the forge. Only then does he turn his full attention to Thomas. How's your mother's health? Much better, sir, thank you. The herbs from Goodwife Emma did her good. Thomas shifts from foot to foot, wanting to watch the work, but knowing he's needed back at the bakery. Glad to hear it. Tell your father I'll bind the handle properly. It'll be stronger than before. Willem waves him off with a smile, and the boy hurries away, his bare feet pattering on the dirt path. The morning progresses in this way work, interspersed with the small interactions that stitch a village together. Goodwife Marjorie stops by with a jug of cool cider and a piece of bread and cheese, knowing her husband forgets to eat when deep in his work. He accepts them gratefully, taking a brief rest while the forge fire settles into steady maintenance level. They exchange a few quiet words, comfortable in the silence that comes with decades of partnership. Then she returns to her own tasks, tending the garden, feeding the chickens, preparing the midday meal. Father Benedict, the village priest, pauses on his way to the church, drawn by the forge fire as men always are, by that primal attraction to flame and the work of hands. Fine morning, Willem, he calls. That it is, Father. Willem wipes his brow with a rag kept for the purpose. The Lord has blessed us with good weather for the work. Indeed, he has. I see you're at the draw knife for Richard. He was fretting about it yesterday. Nearly done. It'll be ready by vespers. Willem returns the blade to the forge for one final heating. How are the preparations for Sunday? They chat easily while the metal heats talk of church matters and village news, the easy conversation of men who have known each other all their lives. Father Benedict's father had been a priest before him, had baptized Willem as a baby in that same stone font that now holds water blessed for the current generation of Thornbury's children. The continuity of it, the sense of lives woven together across time, gives Willem a deep sense of belonging and purpose. When the priest departs, Willem finishes the draw knife heating and hammering the edge to the proper thinness, then the careful process of hardening. He heats it to cherry red and plunges it into the slack tub. The water explodes into steam with a violent hiss, and the metal makes that satisfying ticking sound as it cools rapidly, the crystalline structure locking into place, becoming hard enough to hold a sharp edge. But hardness alone makes brittle metal, so he heats it again, this time to a lower temperature, watching the colors that flow across the steel pale yellow, straw, bronze, purple. These colors, called temper colors, tell him exactly how much he's softened the metal from that initial brittleness. At the right color a dark straw for a blade that needs to hold an edge but not chip, he quenches again. Now it's done, hard enough to cut, soft enough to last. He sets the finished blade aside to cool completely and selects his next project, 3 horseshoe blanks to be shaped from Miller John's draft horse. This is bread and butter work for a village smith, the kind of steady, repetitive task that fills the days and keeps the forge fire burning. He heats the first blank and begins to shape it, his hammer finding that perfect rhythm again, the one that can go on for hours without tiring. The morning sun climbs higher, and the smithy grows warmer. The forge fire never flags, fed regularly with coal and encouraged by the bellows breath. The sounds of the village surround him, children playing, women calling to each other across garden fences, the rumble of a cart on the road, the ever-present background of birdsong and breeze. But inside the smithy, his world narrows to the work before him. The color of hot iron, the feel of the hammer in his hand, the satisfying way the metal moves under his strikes. This is meditation in its purest form, not the emptying of the mind, but its total absorption in present moment and purposeful task. There is no yesterday, no tomorrow, only this glowing piece of iron and the next hammer blow that will shape it. His breathing matches his rhythm. His heartbeat synchronizes with the work. He is not thinking about what he's doing. He is simply doing it, his body and tools and metal all working in harmony, producing something useful and true. Time becomes elastic, irrelevant. He might work for 20 minutes or 2 hours. He cannot say and does not care. The work itself marks time more accurately than any candle or sundial. 3 horseshoes shaped and fitted. The bread paddle handle drilled and bound with iron rings. A broken hinge repaired for the miller. A set of nails forged for the cooper. Each task flows into the next with barely a pause, each requiring its own specific approach, its own level of heat and amount of hammering. Young Peter, the Lord's son, arrives mid-morning with his father's steward. His favorite sword has developed a crack near the hilt and needs attention. This is delicate work, not the rough forgery of horseshoes or nails, and Willem handles the blade with appropriate reverence. A warrior's sword is not just a tool, but an extension of the man himself, and any smith who treats it carelessly will soon find himself without noble patronage. He examines the crack carefully, explaining to the steward what must be done, heat welding the crack closed, then careful work to maintain the blade's temper and balance. "It will take most of the afternoon," he says honestly. "This cannot be rushed." The steward nods, satisfied. "Lord Edmund trusts your skill, Master Willem. Take what time is needed." They discuss payment. This work will be paid in silver, not the traded goods and favors that compose most village economy, and then they depart, leaving the sword in his capable hands. Willem sets the sword carefully aside. It will need his full attention, and the light is better in afternoon anyway for such precise work. Instead, he returns to the simpler tasks, building up a rhythm again, letting his body do what it knows how to do, while his mind rests in that peaceful, meditative state that makes the hours pass like moments. The church bell rings for the 6th hour, midday, and Willem realizes he's been working steadily since dawn without noticing time's passage. His stomach reminds him that morning's bread and cheese were hours ago. He banks the forge fire, covering the hot coals with fresh fuel, but reducing the airflow so it will burn slowly, maintaining heat without consuming excessive coal. The fire will stay alive, sleeping but ready to wake when he returns. He steps out into full daylight, blinking against the brightness after hours in the forge's focused glow. The sun stands directly overhead, and heat shimmers above the thatched roofs of Thornbury. The village is alive with midday activity, children splashing in the stream, women preparing food, men heading home from fields and workshops for the main meal of the day. Willem walks the 20 paces home, his legs slightly stiff from standing, his arms and shoulders pleasantly tired from the morning's work. Marjorie has set out their meal-thick pottage with vegetables from the garden, fresh bread, soft cheese, and small beer to wash it down. They eat together in the cool dimness of their cottage, and she tells him the morning's village news, whose cow is calved, which family's daughter has caught the eye of which family's son. The small dramas and joys that make up daily life in a place where everyone knows everyone else and has for generations. After eating, Willem rests for a short while, as is customary. The heat of midday is no time for heavy forge work anyway. Better to let the fire sleep and the smith rest, both regaining strength for the afternoon's tasks. He dozes in the shadows, his body settling into complete relaxation, his mind drifting in that pleasant space between sleep and waking, where dreams and thoughts mingle freely. Script, Part 2, Afternoon at the Anvil. When Willem returns to the smithy, the afternoon sun slants through the doorway at a different angle, painting new patterns of light and shadow across the worn stone floor. The forge fire greets him like a faithful dog. It has waited patiently, keeping its heart warm beneath the layer of coal he banked over it. He works the bellows gently, coaxing it back to full life, and within moments the familiar roar returns, heat rolling outward in waves, the coals glowing with renewed intensity. The air has changed character since morning, where dawn brought coolness and the fresh smell of dew. Afternoon carries warmth, and the scent of a village at full activity cooking fires. Animals, earth warmed by sun, the green smell of growing things. Through the open door, he can see dust motes dancing in the golden light, and hear the sounds of resumed work throughout Thornbury. The steady thunk of axes splitting wood, the rasp of a saw at the carpenter's shop. Women's voices raised in conversation as they work at their looms or tend their gardens. Willem's attention turns to Lord Edmund's sword, which waits on his workbench like a patient aristocrat. He lifts it carefully, feeling its weight and balance, examining the crack more closely in the better afternoon light. The damage runs perhaps 2 inches along the base of the blade, near the hilt not catastrophic, but serious enough that the weapon could fail at a crucial moment if left unrepaired. Someone's life might depend on his skill in fixing this flaw. The work of heat welding requires absolute precision. Too little heat, and the metal won't fuse properly. Too much, and the blade's carefully maintained temper will be destroyed, leaving it too soft or too brittle. Willem has performed this operation dozens of times, but each sword is different. Each crack presents its own challenges, and complacency is the enemy of good work. He studies the blade as a physician might study a patient, understanding what must be done before making the first incision. He builds up the forge fire to exactly the temperature he needs, hotter than for general work, but not the white heat required for welding 2 separate pieces together. This is more subtle, coaxing cracked metal to rejoin itself. He arranges his tools within easy reach, small hammers for precise work, fine punches, and most importantly, his lightest tongs with jaws wrapped in wet leather to protect the blade's finish. The sword goes into the coals, positioned so only the damaged area is exposed to the intense heat. He watches it with complete focus, noting the color changes, the way the metal begins to glow. Around the damaged area, he's applied a mixture of sand and borax flux that will help clean the metal surfaces and allow them to bond. The flux begins to bubble and foam as it does its work, and the crack itself seems to close slightly just from the heat expansion. At exactly the right moment, and that moment exists only in the smith's experienced eye, cannot be taught from books or explained in words, he withdraws the blade and moves to the anvil. His hammer work now is delicate, precise, almost gentle. Light taps rather than heavy blows, encouraging the metal to flow together, to remember it was once whole. The crack closes gradually under his careful attention, the 2 sides meeting and merging, becoming one again. He watches the color constantly, ready to return to the forge the instant the heat drops too low. 3 times he repeats this process, heating, tapping, examining, heating again. Each cycle closes the crack more completely, until finally he can barely see where the damage was. But seeing isn't enough. He tests it by flexing the blade slightly, feeling for any weakness, any hint that the weld might not have fully taken. The blade feels solid, whole, true. Satisfied, he sets about the equally important task of restoring the blade's temper. This requires heating the blade to a lower temperature and watching for those rainbow colors that flow across polished steel, the temper colors that tell him exactly how hard or soft the metal has become. He cleans a small area near the repair with fine sand until it shines like a mirror, then heats the blade carefully. The colors appear like magic, pale yellow creeping up from the heated area, then straw, then bronze. At the right color, he quenches just that section in oil rather than water. The gentler quench preserves the blade's geometry and prevents warping. The repair is complete, but Willem isn't finished. He takes the blade to his grinding wheel, a massive stone disc that he turns with a foot treadle, and carefully removes any marks his hammerwork might have left. The wheel hisses and throws tiny sparks as it kisses the steel, and he works with patient precision until the repair is invisible to any eye but his own. He knows where it is, will always know, but no one else will be able to see it. The blade will serve Lord Edmund faithfully, and that is what matters. Setting the sword aside to cool completely, Willem turns to other work. The afternoon stretches before him, full of tasks both planned and unexpected. He pulls out a half-finished set of hinges for the church door. Father Benedict had mentioned them this morning, and the work is overdue. These are large hinges, each one as long as a man's forearm, and they require both strength and artistry. The functional parts must be precisely fitted, so the heavy door swings smoothly, but the decorative elements, the curled ends and hammered textures, allow him to exercise his creativity. He heats the first hinge blank to bright orange and begins to work the decorative curl at one end. The hammer dances in his hand, and the metal curls back on itself like a wave frozen in iron. Each blow is deliberate, shaping the curve exactly as he envisions it. When the heat fades, he returns it to the forge, and while it heats, he begins work on the second hinge. This is the rhythm that makes afternoon work flow, multiple pieces in rotation. No wasted time waiting for metal to heat or cool. A shadow falls across the doorway, and he looks up to see Samuel the farmer, hat in hand, hesitant about interrupting. "Master Willem? Hate to bother you, but my plow blade broke this morning. Hit a stone in the north field. Wondered if you might have time to look at it." Willem sets down his hammer and wipes his hands. "Let's see what we have." Samuel's eldest boy carries the broken plow blade, and Willem examines it critically. The iron has snapped cleanly, a victim of hidden stone and perhaps metal that was worked too cold in its original forging. "I can fix it, but it'll need some time. Tomorrow afternoon at earliest." Samuel's face falls slightly. A broken plow in growing season is a serious matter, but he nods acceptance. "Tomorrow's fine, Master Willem. I can work the south field while I wait. What's the cost?" They negotiate briefly. Samuel has no silver, but he has a young pig that Willem's wife has been wanting for their autumn mate, and they strike a bargain that satisfies both men. This is how most business is conducted in Thornbury, goods and services traded back and forth, an intricate web of mutual obligation and support that binds the community together more surely than any contract or coin. With the plow blade set aside for tomorrow's work, Willem returns to the church hinges. The afternoon heat builds, and the smithy becomes almost oppressive despite the open door and high windows. Sweat runs freely down his face and back, stinging his eyes, soaking his tunic. He pauses periodically to drink from the bucket of well water Marjorie keeps filled, the cool liquid a blessing against the relentless heat of forge and sun combined. Young Martin appears, the wheelwright's apprentice, bringing a bent iron tire from a cartwheel that needs straightening. Master says he's sorry for the short notice, but the merchant needs his cart ready by tomorrow morning. Willem examines the bent tire, a curve where there should be none, likely from hitting the rut too hard. "Tell your master it'll be ready by sunset." The boy grins with relief and scampers off. Willem adds the tire to his mental list of afternoon tasks. The work never stops, never ends, but that's exactly as it should be. A blacksmith without work is a smith without purpose. He heats a section of the bent tire and begins to hammer it true on the anvil. This is satisfying work, taking something damaged and making it whole again, restoring function through skill and effort. The tire begins to straighten under his steady hammering, becoming circular again, becoming useful. He works methodically around its circumference, heating and hammering, checking the curve against a wooden template, adjusting as needed. Precision matters even in simple repairs. A wheel that's not perfectly round will wear unevenly and fail before its time. As he works, his mind settles into that meditative state again, where thought becomes quiet and only sensation remains. The weight of the hammer in his hand, the resistance of the iron, the heat on his face, the rhythm of breath and motion. This is not mindless work, but rather work that transcends mind, that operates from a deeper place where body and skill merge into pure action. His father had tried to explain this state when Willem was a young apprentice, but no explanation could convey it. It had to be experienced, earned through years of practice, until the work and the worker became one. The afternoon sun creeps westward, and the light inside the smithy takes on a golden quality, softer than midday's harsh glare. Through the door, he can see the long shadows beginning to stretch across the village common. Women emerge from their cottages to draw water from the well, pausing to chat in the cooling air. Children return from the fields where they've been helping with harvest work, their voices high and bright with the simple joy of youth. Father Benedict's bells ring for none the 9th hour, and the sound carries across Thornbury like a blessing, marking the passage of another afternoon in the endless cycle of days. Willem pauses in his work to listen, as he always does. These bells have marked the hours of his life since childhood, their bronze voices as familiar as his own heartbeat. His father had heard them, his grandfather, and someday his own son, if God grants him one, will hear them too, and perhaps stand in this very smithy, hammer in hand, continuing the work. But there's no time for extended reflection. The wheelwright needs his tire by sunset, and the light is already beginning to change. Willem finishes the straightening work and heats the entire tire to red heat for the final step. The tire must be slightly oval, stretched to fit tightly over the wooden wheel. When the wheelwright shrinks it back to perfect roundness by soaking it in water, it will grip the wood with tremendous force, binding the wheel together. He makes the final adjustments, checks his work one last time, and sets it aside to cool. Another task completed. The church hinges are nearly finished now. Both decorative curls are perfect, and he's satisfied with the texture he's hammered into the metal. A pattern of small dimples that catch light and shadow, adding visual interest while serving no functional purpose beyond beauty. Even simple hinges can be beautiful, should he has any pride in his craft. He drills the mounting holes with his bow drill, a tedious task that requires patience and steady pressure. The drill bit smokes slightly as it cuts through the iron, and the smell of hot metal fills the smithy. A merchant servant appears, leading a horse that's thrown a shoe somewhere on the road. Can you replace it now? My master's in a hurry to reach the next town before dark. Willem examines the horse's hoof, no damage. The shoe simply worked loose and nods. Give me a quarter hour. Horseshoeing is quick work for an experienced smith, bread and butter that can be done almost without thinking. He pulls a blank shoe from his stock, heats it, and shapes it rapidly to fit the horse's hoof. The animal stands patiently, used to this process, barely flinching when Willem hammers the nails through the shoe into the hard outer part of the hoof. Within minutes, the job is done. The servant pays in copper coins, and they're off down the road, the newly shod hoof ringing clear on the hard-packed earth. The afternoon wears on in this way. Constant work, small interruptions, the steady progression of tasks completed and new ones arising. Willem's hammer never seems to rest for long, and the forge fire burns steadily, consuming coal and breathing smoke into the sky. His arms and shoulders ache with the good ache of honest labor, and his hands, though calloused beyond any tender skin's imagining, still feel every impact, every vibration of metal on metal. Around him, the village begins its slow transition toward evening. The quality of light changes, less harsh, more golden, and the heat begins to ease. Shadows grow longer, reaching across the common toward the smithy door. The sounds of day shift slightly. Fewer work noises, more social sounds as people finish their tasks and gather to share the day's news and experiences. Marjorie appears with a cup of cider and a piece of honeyed oatcake, knowing her husband's tendency to work through meals. You'll waste away to nothing if someone doesn't feed you, she says with affectionate exasperation, a joke between them after 30 years of her feeding him and him never wasting to anything resembling nothing. He accepts the food gratefully, suddenly aware that he is indeed hungry. They stand together in the smithy doorway, watching the village life unfold before them, comfortable in each other's presence, needing no words to fill the space between them. She tells him about her day, the vegetables she's pickled for winter, the gossip from the well, the plans for Sunday's meal after church. He listens with half his attention, the other half already planning tomorrow's work, but she doesn't mind. This too is part of their rhythm, as familiar and comfortable as the swing of his hammer. When she leaves, he returns to work with renewed energy. The last major task of the day awaits a set of door latches for the new barn being built by Thomas the prosperous farmer. These are simple pieces, nothing decorative, just functional ironwork to hold doors closed against wind and animals. But simple doesn't mean crude, and Willem takes pride in every piece that leaves his shop, whether it's bound for a lord's sword or a farmer's barn door. He works quickly now, aware that daylight is precious and fading. The latches take shape under his hammer-straight bars with hooks at one end and eyes at the other. He makes them identical in size and shape, a matched set that speaks of careful workmanship. As he works, he thinks about the barn they'll secure, imagines it standing sturdy against winter storms, sheltering livestock and harvest, serving Thomas's family for decades. There's satisfaction in that, in making things that serve, that last, that become part of the fabric of daily life. The sun touches the horizon as he finishes the last latch, and the sky begins its evening transformation, blue fading to gold, gold to orange, orange to the first hints of pink and purple. Through the smithy door, he watches this daily miracle, this reminder that the world turns and time passes, and another day's work is nearly done. The forge fire, which has burned faithfully since before dawn, has earned its rest. He works the bellows one last time, ensuring the coals are burning cleanly, then begins the process of banking the fire for the night. This is ritual too, performed with the same care as the morning's fire lighting. He covers the hot coals with a layer of fresh coal, and then with damp ashes that will reduce the airflow, allowing the fire to sleep through the night without going completely cold. Come morning, when he removes the ash layer, the coals beneath will still hold heat, and the forge will wake more easily than if starting from complete cold. It's a technique as old as smithing itself, passed down through countless generations of craftsmen who understood that fire is precious and should be preserved when possible. He cleans his tools, wiping hammerheads and tongs with an oiled rag, hanging each implement in its proper place. His anvil, that faithful companion of 30 years, gets a light coating of oil to prevent rust. The slack tub is emptied and refilled with fresh water for tomorrow. Scraps of iron and steel are sorted and stored. Nothing is wasted in a blacksmith shop. Even the smallest pieces can be forge welded together to make larger stock, and coal dust can be mixed with clay to make a paste useful for particular applications. As he moves through these end-of-day tasks, his body begins to feel the accumulated fatigue of 10 hours of continuous work. His shoulders protest when he reaches high to hang a hammer. His lower back reminds him of all the bending and twisting. His hands, opening and closing around tool handles, feel stiff and worn. But it's the good tiredness that comes from honest work, from a day fully spent in purposeful activity. He would not trade this feeling for anything, not for ease or comfort or leisure. This is what he was born to do, what his hands and heart were made for. The village has settled into evening now. Cook fires send ribbons of smoke rising from every cottage, carrying the smell of suppers being prepared. Children are called home from their play, their protests echoing across the common. Livestock settle in for the night chickens roosting, cows lowing contentedly after milking, the evening chorus of doves and sparrows preparing to sleep. Willem takes a final look around his smithy, ensuring everything is secure and safe. The banked fire breathes quietly, a soft red glow visible if he looks directly at it. The tools hang in their ordered rows like silent witnesses to the day's work. Tomorrow they'll be used again, and the day after, and the day after that, in the endless cycle of craft and service that gives his life meaning and purpose. He steps out into the evening air, cool now after the day's heat, and closes the heavy wooden door, partway leaving it open enough for air to circulate, but closed enough to keep out wandering animals. His feet carry him automatically toward home, toward the smell of Marjorie's cooking and the promise of rest. Behind him, the smithy settles into its own rest, the stone walls still warm from the day's fire, the anvil silent now, but ready to ring again come dawn. The sky above Thornbury glows with the last light of day, and the first stars begin to appear in the deepening blue of the eastern sky. Another day has passed in the ancient rhythm of work and rest, effort and accomplishment, community and craft. And tomorrow, when the first rooster crows and the sky begins to pale, it will all begin again, the fire, the hammer, the patient shaping of iron into usefulness. This is the blacksmith's life, and it is good. SCRIPT Part 3, Evening by the Hearth. The cottage welcomes Willem with its familiar warmth and the rich aroma of supper cooking over the hearth fire. Marjorie has prepared a substantial meal-roasted chicken with herbs from their garden, turnips and carrots stewed in their own juices, fresh bread still warm from the baking, and a small dish of preserved plums from last autumn's harvest. The table is set simply, but with care, wooden trenchers and cups worn smooth by years of use. A small bundle of wildflowers in the center that she gathered this afternoon while the bread was rising. Willem washes his hands and face in the basin by the door, the cool water soothing against skin that's been heated by forge fire all day. He scrubs at the coal dust embedded in every crease and line of his hands. Though some stains are so permanent, they've become part of him, marks of his trade as distinctive as any guild badge. His fingernails are permanently darkened, the creases of his palms traced in gray no amount of washing will remove. These are the hands of a working man, hands that have shaped iron for 3 decades, and he feels no shame in them. They sit together at their small table, and he bows his head as Marjorie offers thanks for the food, for the day's work, for health and home and all the small blessings that make up a life. Her voice is gentle in the quiet cottage, and through the open window comes the evening song of birds settling to roost and the distant murmur of the village winding down from day to night. When she finishes, he adds his own quiet amen, and they begin to eat. The food is simple but perfectly prepared, seasoned with herbs and salt, nourishing to body and soul. They eat in comfortable silence at first, the silence of 2 people who have shared so many meals that conversation is optional rather than required. But as the edge of hunger fades, they begin to talk about the day's work, about village happenings, about small plans and hopes and observations. He tells her about Lord Edmund's sword and the satisfaction of making the repair invisible. She tells him about the new litter of kittens in the barn and how young Sarah from down the lane stopped by to ask advice about her upcoming wedding. She's nervous, Marjorie says, tearing off a piece of bread. Wants to know if marriage is always as frightening as it seems when you're about to take the vows. What did you tell her? Willem asks, genuinely curious, that it's the best and hardest thing in the world, and that if she chooses wisely and works at it, the love grows deeper every year. Marjorie smiles at him across the table, and in that smile, he sees the girl she was 30 years ago, nervous herself, taking his hand at the church door. We've been fortunate, he says quietly, and she nods, understanding all that lies beneath those simple words, the years of building a life together, the joys shared and sorrows weathered, the daily choice to be kind and patient and present with each other. They finish their meal as the light outside fades from gold to purple to the deep blue of twilight. Marjorie clears the table, and Willem steps outside to check on their small garden plot. The vegetables are doing well, cabbages forming tight heads, bean vines climbing their poles, onions swelling in neat rows. He pulls a few weeds that have dared to sprout since yesterday, and makes a mental note to water everything tomorrow evening if the day stays dry. The garden is Marjorie's domain mostly, but he helps where he can, and there's satisfaction in seeing food grow from seeds they planted together. The village common is quiet now, most families inside their cottages enjoying their own suppers and evening rest. Smoke rises from every chimney, and through lit windows he can see the warm glow of hearth fires and candles. Somewhere a dog barks, and another answers from across the village. A mother's voice calls a child home one last time, and a door closes with a soft thump. These are the sounds of home, of safety, of a community settling into the peace of evening. He returns inside to find Marjorie has lit their tallow candles, precious things used sparingly, and the cottage glows with soft, warm light that dances across the walls and ceiling. She's settled into her chair by the hearth with her mending basket, and he takes his own chair opposite hers, stretching his legs toward the small fire she's built more for light and cheer than heat on this summer evening. This is their evening ritual, as much a part of their day as the morning's firelighting or the midday meal. She mends or spins or cards wool, her hands never idle, while he works on small projects or simply rests, letting his body recover from the day's exertions. Sometimes they talk, sometimes they're silent, but always there's this sense of companionship, of shared space and shared life. Tonight he has a small project, a broken buckle that goodwife Emma brought by last week, a delicate repair that requires fine work better done in the comfort of home than in the heat of the smithy. He works by candlelight, his fingers moving with practiced precision despite the dim illumination. The buckle is brass, not iron, and requires a gentler touch. He has the pieces laid out on a cloth on his lap, and slowly, patiently, he files and fits them together, planning how best to rejoin them. "Father Benedict asked about you today," Marjorie says, her needle flashing in and out of the shirt she's mending. "Wanted to know if you'd finished the church hinges." "Nearly done. I'll deliver them tomorrow." He tests the fit of 2 buckle pieces, nods in satisfaction. They came out well. He should be pleased. He always is. "You do good work, Willem. The best in 3 counties, people say." He grunts, uncomfortable with praise, but pleased nonetheless. "I do honest work. That's all a man can do, give his best and let the work speak for itself." They fall silent again, but it's a comfortable silence, filled with the small sounds of their activities. Her needle through fabric, his file against brass, the soft crackle of the fire, the rustle of wind in the thatch above their heads. Outside, full darkness has fallen, and the village has grown almost completely quiet. Most people rise with the sun and sleep not long after it sets. Candles and lamp oil are expensive, and there's little point in staying awake once the day's work is done. But Willem and Marjorie often linger like this, savoring these evening hours together. With no children of their own a sorrow, they've long since made peace with they have more time for each other than many couples do. Their life together has a quality of intentional presence that might be harder to maintain with a house full of children demanding attention. They've built their own small world, just the 2 of them, and it's enough. More than enough. Do you ever wonder what life would have been like? Marjorie asks suddenly, her hands pausing in their work. If we'd had children? It's a question she asks perhaps once a year, always in these quiet evening moments when thoughts run deeper. His answer is always the same, and always true. "I wonder sometimes. But I wouldn't trade what we have. We've had a good life, you and I, a full life." She nods, satisfied, and returns to her mending. Some sorrows never fully heal, but they can be integrated, accepted, made part of the fabric of a life rather than a tear in it. They've done that work together, year after year, building a marriage that's strong precisely because they've weathered disappointment and chosen each other anyway. Willem finishes the buckle repair, testing it several times to ensure it will hold. The brass gleams softly in the candlelight, and he's satisfied with the work. He'll polish it tomorrow and return it to Emma, who will be grateful to have a treasured possession restored. So much of his work is like this, not grand projects, but small repairs, little salvations that keep people's lives running smoothly. There's dignity in that, in being the person people turn to when something breaks, trusting him to make it whole again. He sets the buckle aside and simply sits, watching Marjorie work, feeling the day's fatigue settle into his bones. His shoulders ache with a deep, persistent ache that he knows will ease once he's horizontal. His hands throb slightly from the day's constant gripping and swinging. His feet, standing on stone all day, feel swollen and tender. But these are familiar discomforts, expected companions of a working life, and they don't trouble him. Pain is just another sensation, and this particular pain is the badge of useful work done well. "I'll need to order more coal soon," he says, thinking ahead. "The supply is running lower than I like. How much will it cost?" Marjorie is always practical about such things, managing their small finances with careful attention. 2 silver pennies for a cartload. But Miller John owes me for the horseshoes and the blade work, and he said he'd haul the coal as part of payment. She nods, making a mental note. Their economy runs on this complex web of obligation and reciprocity. He shoes the miller's horse. The miller hauls his coal. The baker provides bread in exchange for tool repairs. The farmer trades vegetables for ironwork. Silver changes hands only for the finest work or with strangers passing through. It's an economy built on trust and relationship, and it works because everyone knows that today's favor will be returned when they need something tomorrow. The candles burn lower, their flames steady in the still air. Moths flutter against the shutters, drawn by the light, and somewhere outside an owl calls, hunting in the darkness. The fire on the hearth has burned down to glowing coals, and Marjorie banks it for the night, covering it with ash so it will keep a heart of warmth until morning, when she'll coax it back to life for cooking. "Time for bed," she says, and he agrees readily. The day has been long, beginning before dawn and ending now well after sunset. His body craves rest, the deep sleep that comes from honest exhaustion. He helps her snuff the candles, all but one that they'll carry to the sleeping alcove, and together they make their final preparations for night. The sleeping alcove is a small space partitioned off from the main room, just large enough for their bed and a small chest that holds their spare clothes and linens. The bed is simple but comfortable, a straw mattress over wooden slats, covered with woolen blankets and a quilt Marjorie made before they were married, each patch a memory of a dress or shirt worn out in service. They climb in together, and the straw rustles beneath them, settling into the familiar hollows their bodies have made over the years. Marjorie extinguishes the last candle, and darkness envelops them, complete and peaceful. Through the shutters comes the faintest hint of moonlight. The moon is waxing toward full, and even with shutters closed, its silver glow finds ways to seep in. Willem lies on his back, feeling his body relax into the mattress, feeling the day's tension begin to drain away. Beside him, Marjorie settles into her own position, and after a moment, her hand finds his under the blanket, her fingers interlacing with his in a gesture as familiar and necessary as breathing. "Good night, husband," she whispers. "Good night, wife," he answers, and feels sleep beginning to tug at him already. But before he surrenders to it, his mind drifts back over the day, not cataloging tasks completed or planning tomorrow's work, but simply remembering moments. The satisfaction of Lord Edmund's sword repair, young Thomas's smile when promised his father's paddle would be ready by midday, the way the afternoon light painted golden patterns on the smithy floor, the taste of Marjorie's chicken and herbs, the quiet companionship of their evening together. These are the moments that make a life, he thinks drowsily. Not grand achievements or dramatic events, but the steady accumulation of days well lived, work well done, love well tended. He has shaped iron into 1,000 forms, but the greatest shaping has been his own life, hammered on the anvil of experience into something useful and true. Outside, the village sleeps under its blanket of stars. In every cottage, families rest together, gathering strength for tomorrow's work. The fields lie quiet under the moon, crops growing silently, inexorably, fulfilling their purpose. The church stands sentinel on its low hill, its bell silent now, but ready to ring again when dawn comes. The stream that runs through Thornbury murmurs its eternal song, indifferent to human concerns, flowing as it has flowed for longer than anyone can remember. And in the smithy, the forge fire sleeps beneath its covering of ash and coal, a red glow in its heart that will wake to full life when its master returns with the dawn. The anvil stands solid and patient, waiting for the hammer's kiss. The tools hang in their places, each one an extension of the smith's will and skill. Everything is ready. Everything waits. Tomorrow will bring new work, new challenges, new opportunities to serve the community through craft. There will be pieces to repair, new items to forge, customers to satisfy, problems to solve. The rhythm will continue: heat and hammer, fire and iron, the ancient dance of blacksmithing that's as old as civilization itself. And Willem will be there, as he has been for 30 years, adding his labor to the great chain of craftsmen stretching back through time. But that's tomorrow. Tonight, there is only this: the warmth of the bed, the comfort of his wife's hand in his, the deep satisfaction of a day fully spent. His breathing slows and deepens, matching Marjorie's, and together they drift into sleep's gentle embrace. The moon climbs higher in the sky, painting the village in silver and shadow. A fox trots across the common, pausing to investigate a scent, then continuing on its nocturnal business. In the pond beyond the miller's house, frogs sing their ancient chorus, proclaiming their territories and calling for mates. A nightingale, that most blessed of birds, pours its liquid song into the darkness, notes tumbling over each other in pure, uncomplicated joy. Inside the cottage, Willem dreams of fire and iron, as he often does. But these are peaceful dreams, not troubling ones. He dreams of the forge fire glowing warm and welcoming, of metal flowing like butter under his hammer, of pieces coming together perfectly on the first try. He dreams of his father standing beside him, nodding approval, though his father has been dead these 10 years. He dreams of apprentices he might have trained if life had given him sons, passing on the knowledge as it was passed to him. Marjorie dreams too, though her dreams are her own mystery. Perhaps she dreams of the children they never had, or of the garden in full bloom, or simply of the peaceful rhythm of days spent in useful work and loving companionship. Whatever her dreams, a small smile touches her lips as she sleeps, and her hand stays entwined with Willem's, anchoring them both through the journey of night. The hours pass in silence and stillness. The moon reaches its zenith and begins its slow descent toward the western horizon. The stars wheel overhead in their eternal dance, the same stars that have watched over Thornbury for generations beyond counting. The village breathes with the rhythm of sleep, gathering strength, renewing itself for the day to come. In the hour before dawn, when the night is darkest and most still, when even the nightingale has ceased its singing and the foxes have returned to their dens, there is a quality of profound peace that settles over everything. This is the hinge moment between night and day, when the world pauses between breaths. It's as if all of creation is gathering itself, preparing for the great daily miracle of sunrise. Willem stirs slightly in his sleep, some internal clock telling him that dawn is approaching, though the darkness outside shows no sign of lightening yet. His body knows the rhythm of his days too well to need a rooster's crow or the church bells to wake him. In another quarter hour, his eyes will open, and he will rise to begin the cycle again. The fire, the forge, the hammer, the endless beautiful repetition of craft and purpose. But for now, for these last precious moments, he sleeps. The village sleeps. The world is still and dark and peaceful, wrapped in the gentle embrace of night's final hour. And in this stillness, there is a kind of perfection, not the perfection of completion, but the perfection of rightness, of things being as they should be, of lives lived in harmony with purpose and season and the patient rhythms of earth and sky. Soon the first bird will call. Soon the eastern sky will begin to pale. Soon the roosters will crow and doors will open, and smoke will rise from 100 chimneys as the village wakes to face another day. The forge will roar to life, the anvil will ring, and Willem will take up his hammer once more to shape iron and serve his community. But not yet, not quite yet. For now, there is only peace, only rest, only the quiet breathing of a man and his wife in their small cottage, surrounded by a village of neighbors and friends, all of them together in this ancient place, living their ordinary, extraordinary lives. The darkness begins to thin, almost imperceptibly at first. The stars start to fade, one by one. The moon, now low in the west, loses some of its brilliance. The quality of the silence changes subtly, as if the world itself is beginning to wake, to stretch, to prepare for the gift of another day. And in the smithy, beneath its blanket of ash and coal, the forge fire keeps its patient vigil, waiting for the master's hand to wake it fully, to coax it back to roaring life, to transform it once again from slumbering ember to living flame. Everything is ready. Everything waits. Another day is about to begin, and it will be both exactly like yesterday and entirely new, as all days are. This is the rhythm of a blacksmith's life, the ancient pattern of work and rest, effort and peace, fire and quiet. This is the way it has always been, the way it will continue to be as long as there are smiths to tend forges and villages to serve. And in this continuity, this connection to the past and future both, there is comfort and meaning, and a kind of immortality, not of the individual, but of the craft, the tradition, the endless human need to shape the world into usefulness and beauty. Willem sleeps and dreams and rests. The village sleeps around him. The forge fire holds its ember heart close. And the world turns slowly toward dawn, toward light, toward the beginning of another day, in the endless procession of days that make up a life, a season, a generation, a history. Soon, very soon now, the first light, the first sound, the first breath of a new day. But for this moment, this precious pause between darkness and dawn, there is only peace. Deep, complete, perfect peace. And so our day at the forge comes to a gentle close, dear friends. We've walked with Master Willem from the first spark of dawn through the steady rhythm of afternoon work, and finally into the peaceful embrace of evening rest. We've felt the heat of the forge fire, heard the ring of hammer on anvil, and witnessed the quiet dignity of a life lived in service and craft. Thank you for spending this time with us here at Medieval Sleep Tales, for allowing us to carry you back to a simpler, slower world where work was meditation and community was everything. If this journey brought you peace, we invite you to like this video, leave a comment sharing your thoughts, and subscribe to join us for more cozy medieval escapes. May your own rest be as deep and satisfying as a blacksmith's after a long day's honest work. May you wake refreshed, ready for your own purposeful tasks. Until next time, from Medieval Sleep Tales, sweet medieval dreams.